Mark Passerini, a Chicago guy, born and bred, running Ohm of Medicine and also the Illinois Cannabis Industry Association, of course, part of the National Cannabis Industry Association. He is fighting the good fight, as we say, in Illinois. He takes us through exactly what has happened, what is happening, what's about to occur. Okay, so Mark Passerini. We've got Mark Passerini, co-founder Ohm of Medicine, also involved in the Illinois Cannabis Industry Association. Mark, thanks so much for a little bit of time here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Seth.
And just full disclosure, this is a morning time conversation. So, I've had a little bit of coffee. Mark, have you had any coffee?
I've had about a half a pot.
All right. So a half a pot, he says. Okay. So Ohm of Medicine, I guess let's start there. You're a Chicago guy, right? Take us through the, what you guys put together as far as Ohm of Medicine.
Sure. I'm born and raised in the city of Chicago. I went to school at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. So when the law passed in 2008, the law passed by ballot initiative in the state of Michigan by 63% of the vote. And in 2010, once President Obama had declared that he wasn't going to be going after medical marijuana states and facilities, we decided to open the Ohm of Medicine. We opened in July of 2010, and really we just set out to be the most transparent and compliant facility in the state. And the way we did that is we invited pretty much every lawmaker and legislator and politician that we could find that would be willing to have a discussion with us. So when we opened our doors, we immediately invited every single member of the city council in Ann Arbor to come in and meet with us and explain to them exactly what our intent was with the Ohm of Medicine. We invited the mayor, the chief of police, the city attorney. To date, we've had about 24 state senators and state reps through our facility, and really it was just the type of place that we wanted. We wanted to create a place that we were comfortable bringing our grandmothers to. And to date, we've had about 10,000 patients come through our doors, and I think we've done a really good job at not only helping patients with their medical cannabis, but creating a space and really bringing the community together.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about the fact that I've only seen pictures to this point, but everything looks beautiful. How did you know to invite, those lawmakers in and the police? What background brought you to Ohm of Medicine to begin with?
Well, I guess it went from one green industry to the next. I was in the renewable energy industry. I worked for a wind energy company out of Boulder, Colorado, and a high efficiency lighting company out of Wisconsin. And when you ask why I decided to bring in all these politicians, I just knew that they were going to have to play a part, a major part and a major role moving forward with medical cannabis in the state of Michigan, since it was a law that was passed by the voters. I know that it's definitely it still is a very controversial issue, and I think the most important piece and the key to progress with all of this is just education. And I think that most folks fear what they fear the unknown, and a lot of the people that we had come through the Ohm of Medicine really just didn't understand cannabis, didn't really either believe or know of its efficacy as medicine. So we just wanted to have a real open and frank conversation with all these folks.
Yeah. Talk about that transition, though, from one green industry to another. How did you find cannabis as an industry from the renewable energy space?
How did I find it? Well, it was actually a good friend of mine that I've known for 20 years that gave me a call back in April of 2010, who wanted to open a dispensary in Lansing, Michigan, and just needed a little bit of capital to get it off the ground. So my business partner Keith and I decided to help him out. And once we saw that it was up and running, and we went to go visit the facility, we realized that this is something that we wanted to be involved in ourselves. We didn't have any sort of operational responsibilities with the facility in Lansing. So we talked to him and said, "Hey, listen, we want to open our own place," and he was totally fine with that. So we opened in Ann Arbor just a couple months later.
And how much did you know the Ann Arbor kind of community? Obviously, you went to Michigan, and you're familiar with it from a from a student's perspective. What about from a businessman's perspective? How did you know that that was a good home?
Sure. So, one thing about Ann Arbor that I was very aware of is its history with very sensible cannabis laws. They were one of the first. Ann Arbor was one of the first cities in the country to decriminalize back in the early '70s. They made it a $5 fine to possess an ounce of cannabis or less. So, I definitely knew that Ann Arbor was going to. Ann Arbor's always kind of embraced cannabis culture. They're the home of the longest running cannabis reform rally in the country, which is Hash Bash. I've had the honor of emceeing and organizing the speakers for Hash Bash for the past few years. And I just knew that Ann Arbor, when it comes to marijuana, would embrace not only our business but embrace the movement as a whole. When it comes to business, I've never, run a business or anything like that in the city of Ann Arbor, but I immediately made as many contacts as I could within the business community. We became a member of the Main Street Area Association. Our location is actually based on Main Street, right in downtown Ann Arbor. And really, just became a kind of we wanted to become a fabric of the community. We joined a number of different nonprofits. We're part of the Ann Arbor Arts Center, which is the city's oldest nonprofit. And we give pretty generously every year to the Food Gatherers, which is our local food bank. So we, really just became, tried to just intertwine ourselves with the business community right off the bat.
Excellent, and it's good to hear that you're giving back to the community through the business, and some of the best and brightest in the industry really recommend that, and that's how kind of the community opens their arms to you. I need to go ahead and ask you about your personal giving back. Am I right that you're a hospital magician? And if I'm right, what is that, Mark?
You've done your research, Seth. Yes. For the
Yeah.
past year, I've been a part of just an incredible organization called Open Heart Magic, which is based out of Chicago, Illinois, which basically trains folks to become hospital magicians and go into children's hospital rooms, perform magic, and kind of put smiles on their faces when otherwise, are pretty bleak times for a lot of these kids. We are now going to be expanding into the Ann Arbor market. University of Michigan has a children's hospital called CS Mott, which we're now starting to bring hospital magicians to bring the magic back for children in that hospital. So it's definitely one of my favorite 2 hours of my week, going in, and I feel like I get as much out of it as these kids do, and I'm pretty excited to be able to start doing this in Ann Arbor. I know that they've gotten, I think, about a dozen volunteers to start off, and I think they're going to be starting training within the next couple of weeks to be able to go into the hospitals at the end of the year.
Okay. We've got a podcast that focuses on magic, so we'll ask further questions about that on that podcast. So we'll keep it on cannabis for now. As far as you're concerned, though, in all seriousness, you obviously have proven that you personally really appreciate giving back, whether it's through the hospital or even as an MC at Hash Bash. You talk about the kind of the way that you give back to the community, from an home of medicine perspective. And so it does add up to me that you would be a perfect person to kind of be a part of and I think even start up the Illinois Cannabis Industry Association. When did you start getting involved with that?
Well, I really started putting our board together back in December of 2013 is when we officially became an entity, so to speak, in the state of
Hmm.
Illinois when we registered. Um, the reason I saw a need to put together an association in the state of Illinois is I saw what a lack of organization would do in the state of Michigan. In the state of Michigan, we still have no regulation. It's kind of the Wild West. It's a situation a lot like California, where there's nothing really written into the law regarding distribution and dispensaries. So I knew that Illinois was going to be a contentious state. It passed legislatively. It barely passed. It only passed by 4 votes in the state house. And there needed to be an organization in place that would be a voice for the industry. So the Illinois Cannabis Industry Association is actually an affiliate of the National Cannabis Industry Association. The NCIA has about 1,000 members nationwide, and we're looking to kind of mimic what they've been able to accomplish in Washington, D.C. We want to mimic the same thing in Springfield, Illinois, and make sure that the industry is represented fairly.
Yeah. Well, what have you found? If December 2013 is when you started, I would imagine you've got at least a little bit of wind at your back now here in September of 2015. Hard to believe it. What are some of the keys that you've taken away from from the industry association? What are you guys focused on explicitly in Springfield?
Well, there's a number of legislative priorities that we've got, but I think probably the top 2 things that we've been focused on is really bumping up the patient count in the state of Illinois. Right now, there's only 3,000 patients, which is making a lot of business owners and investors nervous in terms of a sustainable business. We want to strip away a lot of the barriers and hurdles that patients have to go through in order to become a patient in the state of Illinois. For example, we're the only state that requires fingerprinting in order to become a patient. There are a number of different qualifying conditions that we're going to be trying to add to the list here in Illinois. I think the average for patient eligibility in most states is about 26% of the 26% of the population of a state would be eligible under most states' laws with their qualifying list, and in Illinois it's only about 2%. So we definitely need to add some qualifying conditions. We need to make sure that businesses are viable, and these people, a lot of folks are putting in six figures, sometimes 7 figures into these facilities, because there are only 22 cultivation facilities in the state of Illinois and 60 dispensaries. So a lot of money's going into it, and if there's only going to be a few thousand patients, it's not going to be sustainable. We want to make sure that the program is a pilot program in the state of Illinois. It's a 4-year pilot program, and we need to make sure that it remains a permanent option for the patients.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You've hit on obviously the main issues there. As far as possibly, hopefully, the easiest thing to get through, and easy is a relative word, Mark, please understand that I understand how hard all of this stuff is. But fingerprinting a cancer patient, and treating that person like a criminal, how far along are we in kind of changing that kind of rule set?
Well, that's actually going to be one of the most difficult things to change, because it was written in the original bill. That was one of the things that the sponsor of the bill had to put in there, felt that he had to put in there in order for it to pass, because a lot of the detractors, just wanted to see a lot more oversight. And so that's going to be one of the most difficult things, because that's got to happen, legislatively.
Mm-hmm. And then as far as, patient count, you kind of mentioned a couple of ways, that you are, focused on increasing the patient count. Is there anything that we can do outside of Illinois to help on that initiative? Obviously, that's the kind of the biggest hurdle. If there aren't patients to serve, you can't serve patients. So what can maybe the industry outside of Illinois do to help, if anything?
Yeah, I think the more education, the better. I think most folks would agree that in the industry that cannabis helps just a multitude of different conditions, and we see it every day in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Especially with folks that are suffering from chronic pain. Chronic pain is one
Hmm.
of the biggest conditions throughout the country that patients are getting their medical cannabis cards for. And unfortunately, in Illinois, chronic pain is not one of the qualifying conditions. So I think in terms of educating lawmakers, getting as much information out there as possible, and putting, what we're doing in Ann Arbor is we're working with the University of Michigan on a pain study. It's a longitudinal study with our patients, so hopefully we can. We've actually just submitted our study to JAMA, the Journal for American Medical Association. So we're hopeful that it's going to be published very shortly, and just things like that, which will just kind of push the envelope a little bit and allow lawmakers to realize that there is an efficacy in cannabis, and unfortunately, because of its Schedule One status at the federal level, it's very difficult to perform studies. But more and more dispensaries around the country are seeing some pretty positive results and need to make those public.
Yeah. And it doesn't hurt that business runs along just fine in Colorado and Washington, and as all of these states come online, from an adult use perspective, it kind of draws attention to the fact that hey, everything's okay here. Obviously,
Absolutely.
the success of medical states like yours, also can showcase that. But we keep on keeping on. And to keep on keeping on, watch this segue, Mark. I guess we have to remain fit. And I don't think that you and I have talked about the CannaFit Club or CannaFit Club. Is this new? What is this? What am I talking about?
It is new. I was introduced to the concept just a few months ago by the CEO of CannaFit. They're actually in the startup phase right now. I'm not sure. I don't believe that they've gotten funding completely just yet. I sit on the advisory board. I was approached by, like I said, the CEO of CannaFit, who really appreciated what we've been doing at Home of Medicine and wanted to use our dispensary as kind of a launching point for his platform. The platform is basically a wellness platform online where folks can track all of their intake, not only their cannabis intake, but all of their food intake, and really, have a good way to be able to track everything that they're putting into their bodies. And this is just
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like so far they've been doing a really good job in terms of getting their message out there. I know that they've had a platform that they've been working with for, I think, about 15, 20 years, where they've had 5 million users, called Nutrio, Nutrio. Um, but yeah, it's exciting. It's coming here shortly. I think we're gonna be live with CannaFit.
Got it. Okay, so you're on that board, and obviously running the Illinois Cannabis Industry Association, obviously running Home of Medicine. As you kind of turn the corner here, while dealing with all of the issues that we've talked about from an Home of Medicine perspective, what's the path forward? What does the fourth quarter look like? What does first quarter look like? What are your goals for 2016 if you've got them already?
Well, like I alluded to earlier, I think the biggest goal is to really get some legislation in the books to get some regulations in the state of Michigan for distribution. Right now there are about 250, maybe 300 dispensaries throughout the state of Michigan, and all of them are operating in somewhat of a legal gray area. Right now, there are a few bills in the House that are being worked on to not only regulate dispensaries, but also oversee edible making and extracts. It's been a work in progress. They're by no means perfect, but we are hoping to get some, get some just some verbiage in our state law that allows for us to specifically be there. um,
Yeah.
on top of that, though, there are a couple of campaigns for adult use legalization in 2016. So it would not surprise me to see a ballot initiative in November of 2016 to go the route of Colorado, Washington, Oregon, and Alaska.
And here we go, and we'll see what happens with that, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, nationwide, we got more than a couple of those on the ballot in that presidential election year. So, I want to make sure to ask you a few final questions here. We traditionally ask the following three questions. One is, what has most surprised you in cannabis? And we certainly want your Illinois perspective there. Number two is, what has most surprised you in life? And you and I are about the same age, so I'm interested to hear what you think about that. And finally, on your soundtrack of life, we're wondering if you could give us one track. So, if we're listening to the Mark Passerini soundtrack of life, what would be a key track on there? So, going back to the beginning, what has most surprised you in cannabis? You're there in Illinois. Folks are familiar with the cannabis community in Colorado. Folks are familiar with the cannabis community in Washington and California. Michigan has fewer players, certainly. So, what has most surprised you in cannabis?
Oh, that's a great question, Seth. That's
why we ask it.
Surprised me over the past 5 years. I think probably one thing that surprises me the most is just how staunch and set in their ways people are when faced with scientific evidence, when faced with the truth. I think so many people that have been exposed to the past 80 years of propaganda from not only our government but so many different sources when it comes to cannabis. Just don't want to hear anything different. It's so difficult to turn people around. I think it's becoming a lot easier, especially with the advent of not only the internet, but I mean it's so easy to just get the information these days. And it seems that cannabis is taking the same pathway as gay marriage has, in terms of just it's skyrocketing to acceptance. But there are still just quite a few people out there that just don't want to hear it. So I think that's probably one of the biggest surprises. I figured when we started our business 5 years ago that it would only take a couple years to change all the hearts and minds of legislators and politicians, but it just doesn't seem that it's as easy as I thought. So that's probably what surprised me the most.
Yeah, and it's one of those issues where the public is ahead of some of the legislators and some of the regulators, some of the folks that are really truly writing the laws. Obviously, with the fingerprinting, the public is way ahead of that. So yes, you still have a fight to fight, but it sounds like you can see at least a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Of course, you do have to traverse that tunnel. And so then, as far as what has most surprised you in life, what would your answer be there? And I know you said the cannabis question was big. This is even bigger, right?
Yeah, I would say growing up in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Things moved along at a certain pace. And I think what surprised me most recently over the past 10, 15 years is the matter of which information and knowledge has been able to be spread throughout the world as quickly as it has. And I guess that's the internet. I guess what's really surprised me is the internet. To be perfectly honest, when I was in high school and college, my first few years of college, was in the early 90s. Email was just coming out, and I actually was one of the people that kind of resisted a little bit. I didn't really use email until my senior year of college in '97. But I think that's really surprised me in terms of both this industry and my last industry with renewable energy, how quickly the world can get on board with things that make sense. So I think the spread of information and knowledge is one thing that I got to say I'm pleasantly surprised with.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. From everything from sitting in what was called computer class and wondering to myself I wonder if ESPN has a website. But that's, that was then and this is now. It certainly has moved along quite briskly. And maybe maybe bringing back those thoughts from college might help on this next question. As far as your soundtrack of life, what would one track be on the Mark Passerini soundtrack of life?
Interesting. A soundtrack of life. My favorite album has got to be Graffiti Blues by Blue Mitchell. So I'd say just that whole album. It's an instrumental album, but for me, it from start to finish is something that I could have playing in the background for the rest of my life here.
There you go. That is a great answer. I appreciate the brash and boldness, the Midwestern, again, brashness. And again, I'm making fun of myself being a New Yorker. You're the nice guy here, but pulling out the whole album. We're gonna go play that right now. Mark, really appreciate your time here. We made it through this morning session, but we do know that you guys are really fighting the good fight in Illinois. You're doing a good job. I'm here to tell you that you are making headway, even if it feels like you're not. You've got some really tough fights on your hand with the fingerprinting and the number of patients and and everything in between. Let alone just running a business. So thanks for fighting the fight. Fighting the good fight, and again, appreciate your time.
Great. I appreciate what you're doing, Seth. Keep it up.
You got it. So we got through that morning conversation. Mark Passerini, thank you so much for your time. And as you can tell, it is a little bit more difficult than one might assume running a cannabis business, especially there in Illinois, but really pretty much anywhere. So thanks to Mark for his time and for fighting the good fight, as we say.